and hopefully shed some light on the origins of secret societies and try to get some more clarity as to what it is that the Illuminati was, how they operated, what was where did their ideas originate from, and hopefully we'll walk away with some more clarity as to how these societies fit into our current day realities. So, Rabbi Hadjoff, do you want to add anything before? I would like to give like a very quick, brief introduction to the Illuminati for those people that don't know who they were, and then we'll use that as a.
Who they were? It could be who they are, Rabbi Reuven. You're already jumping to conclusions over here. Let's see what we're dealing with, my friend.
Okay, so the Illuminati comes from the word illuminus, to illuminate. They were a secret sect of Bavarian citizens. That was a section in an area in Germany. And they were as a secret society during the time of the Enlightenment. They were founded in the late 1700s. And their goal was to oppose superstition, to help free humanity from religious influence over public life. They were also trying to help the people get over the abuse of the power of the state and the monarch and so on and so forth. They tried to bring order to a world that they saw that was very
sounds very much like the founding of America, doesn't it? Nothing mentioned.
Yeah, no. So there's actually
break away from the church, the monarch. Sounds very similar to what they tried to do and achieved in doing here when they founded the original republic over here.
So there's actually, there is an echo. I think it's from right. Are you guys still hearing an echo? Okay, great. No echoes anymore. Okay, good. So let's just do this. You have this secret society, okay, that has been popularized from books like Dan Brown's, Angels and Demons, and movies like National Treasure with Nicolas Cage, and so on and so forth. And the idea is that these secret societies operate in a way outside of the law. They're above the law. They have connections where they could, quickly find money, access to power, access to governments, manipulating the world around us to achieve their unique goals. Some people may even argue that so much of what the United States currently is going through with its big shift in its politics, this is why some people believe that Donald Trump rose to power, because he was outside of the political swamp, a true hero coming in, trying to save the United States from the innards, the people that are running the show, people part of these secret societies, and so on and so forth. It's popular. The question is it real, A? And B is, does it have any kind of relationship to Judaism?
I want to add one more aspect to this.
Go for it.
That is, what is the fascination? Because I love this stuff personally. I mean, all these topics which we chose speak very much to me in my own, readings and research. But the fascination of a secret society, of a small cabal of these men, I mean, we just have these images, I mean, it eventually becomes the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is not for today, and the Rothschild, which is another discussion we'll be having. But the idea, Rabbi Reuven and everyone else, that there is a small cabal of people, of decision makers, of power brokers, who get together every so often and make the big decisions of what's happening. And just what we see in the media and the government is just the front, it's just the curtain, but they are lurking in the shadows all the time. This fascination that we have, that people have, a lot of anti-Semitism has obviously been caused by this. The Jews are behind this. And there's a strong connection between the Illuminati and the Freemasons, and then the Freemasons and Jews, or Jewish history, Jewish ideas, Jewish philosophy. We're going to see there is some overlap there as well. So somehow we're involved in this. But what do you think is this fascination between people who control the world, the big decisions? Really, we make no decisions. They know who's going to be in power. They know who's in control. Or maybe the people in control don't have any power whatsoever. They're just figureheads who are kind of like representing these hidden groups, these power brokers that are behind society. That's really, I think, what we're going over here. And in addition to that, is there a wisdom? Is there information that these people are privy to, that they have access to, that the rest of us don't? Right? I mean, I'm going deep in the dark web over here. Is there information these people have that we just don't have any access to, don't even know that it exists as a possibility? That's kind of like where I think I want to be going with this whole discussion today.
Okay, cool. Let's take it. Let's go back to the beginning. Okay, from a Jewish perspective, whenever you're going to start with anything, you got to go back to Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden, paradise. There's this tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's mysterious. What is it? You have this serpent who's a speaking, walking, thinking, talking, individual who tries to persuade Eve to eat from this tree. And eventually she succumbs and she does. They get banished from the garden. Symbolically, the garden represents the place of all wisdom, connection to God, the infinite, perfect society, utopia, if you will. And they're pushed out. And on some level, they have a strong desire to go back in, but they can't. They're not allowed back in. They're not allowed back in until they rectify themselves. And I believe this desire is buried in each of us. That we each have this very profound, strong desire to go back and build a better society for ourselves, build a better country, build a better world than the one that we're currently living in. It comes back to that story back in.
I want to jump. I think that's fascinating. I think there's something to that. That this idea of that we all have this inner desire. It's part of the human condition. That if we tap into ourselves to fix the world, that there's people or beings from the original Nachash, snake, whatever that being represented in the Garden of Eden, there's always things going to try to take us off course, to lead us the wrong way. And we're always trying to find the truth. I want to jump something else we just spoke about before we started this, and that is the idea of Nimrod. Nimrod, who created the Tower of Babel, was this biblical character who's mentioned in passing, who's described as an Ish Gibor, a strong individual. It's actually Israelis. In Israel, I see the Nimrod name is quite popular, but actually he wasn't a good person. He was really one of the first ever dictators. And he built, what was the idea behind this? As a child, you read the story and you think it's just building a big tower because he wants to reach the heavens, but there's a lot of depth over here and a tremendous amount of wisdom that he and the people had. What was he trying to achieve? And how is this somehow maybe connected to these little secret groups of power bases?
Well, what I think that's a very deep idea that most people don't appreciate. The Tower of Babel wasn't just a building that a bunch of ancient people were trying to build, but there's a very deep rooted philosophy in there. The idea that you have, patricians and plebs; those are terms that were used in Greece and Rome. You had different sects of society. That's always been true in every society. As a matter of fact, Avram Avinu, his family, Terach, was very good friends with Nimrod. And the fact that they had a child, that Avram had a child who, kind of went out of step with the popular beliefs and philosophy of the time, was an insult to and a stain on Terach's family. To the point where Terach's the guy that actually gets his son arrested because he doesn't want to be pushed out of that society, the upper echelons of society. He didn't want to be cast aside. He wanted to show his loyalty. So Nimrod's the first person in history, at least that we are aware of, where he creates this us versus them, higher class, lower class, plebs, patrician society.
Right. And he was like a dictator of his day.
Yeah.
And one of the commentators, the Malbim, I think, says that the tower he built, that's interesting, towers are always used to represent power and place of wisdom, which we'll talk about more. We talk about the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and before that, the tower of and the building of King Solomon. But he built this tower that everyone was forced to live within sight of the tower. He wanted full control over these lower plebs of these smaller people, that they couldn't leave the confines of the vision of the tower. That was one interpretation of what he was trying to build, right? Just like the watchtower or the in these dictatorships, everyone has to be within earshot and sight of the controlling party. Right? And now we use the internet and other ways to keep tabs of people, but that's the way they used to do it then. right? You could not live further away than this tower. The tower to see where you were and what you were doing. That's how one of the commentators understands it.
So how do you understand it?
I see it connected to this. There's a power base, a knowledge base, dictatorships, and I think that's what the Freemasons and eventually the Illuminati that came out, I think, of the Freemasons were trying to do. We want this wisdom.
Before we talk about the Freemasons, let's just talk a little bit. The Freemasons was a secret society that was founded sometime in the 14th century, as far as we know. Who were they? What were they trying to? Who were they trying to free? Were they all? Do they all lay bricks? Like, why were they called the Freemasons?
So they were originally, I think, some kind of builders, like a union, I guess you call it today, from what I've read about and try to understand. But they had a secret knowledge. There was some information that they wanted to keep among themselves. Now it's a little bit jokey. It's not a secret society. It's a society with secrets. That's probably the best description I had of them.
That's a great
description.
They
had information that they did not want to present to the rest of the world. Right? And think about it as a dictatorship. What do dictatorships do? They want to keep everyone stupid. Look at Iran today or North Korea. We want to keep control. You can't leave our confines. We want to keep people stupid and ignorant. Right? Judaism, by the way, was always the opposite. They wanted to enlighten, right, the Jews with as much knowledge and information, as much reading. Right? Jews were always statistically, had much higher proportions of readers and understanders among them. So this idea of knowledge that was being held, right, and the church used to do the same thing. So the Freemasons came along, and we're not too sure, but it seems like they were groups, different groups that tried to break away from the old order. They wanted to create a new order, but they wanted to do it among themselves by enlisting people to come in, and all the secret handshakes and information and ceremonies that came with it was just ceremonial. I believe a lot of it is based upon stuff they know from Judeo-Christian history. If you look at their buildings and you read a lot of them, you'll see a lot of them are based upon the temple of King Solomon. There was this obsession they had with the first Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. There's this idea as well. I don't want to jump too much because I want to go back to Nimrod for a moment as well, because I think this idea of a tower, of a place of information and learning, I mean, Nimrod used it for the bad. And King Solomon, when he built the temple, he once used it, and his father, obviously King David, for the good, to share knowledge, to share information, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. As you're saying this, I'm thinking of like Nimrod and the tower as the first information age, where you kind of pulled all the people together. You had networking built into the system. Everyone knew each other. They were no more of these small little villages.
And Judaism doesn't want that. What did God do? God made them all speak different languages, and he spread them around. He didn't wipe them out. What do you mean
Judaism doesn't want that?
I don't think, if you look at Jewish writings and philosophy, the Torah, the Torah doesn't want, for the most part, there are going to be exceptions, doesn't want information and people staying together. Okay, in little group, it wants information and knowledge spread as out as much as possible. Right? There's going to be exceptions. We'll see Kabbalah is going to be an exception, which is going to be
that wasn't their issue. Their issue wasn't that they were together. The issue, as a matter of fact, God, commends them and says, "Whoa, there's shalom here. I mean, there's shalom. I can't really attack them."
Yes, that is true.
It wasn't the unity. The unity was actually one of the most redeeming parts of the Tower of Babel.
So the problem was that they were actually going against God. They were using the information.
They were becoming narcissists, that they believed they were the gods. Right. And you're in control. There is no other control. That I decide.
Nimrod was taking the power for himself.
Right. Nimrod needs to rebel. He was also Amrapel, Amarpol. He's the guy that's creating a situation where he's descending the whole world into a place of darkness.
So what did he do? So very, very good. So there was unity among the people, these plebs, as you were saying, but he didn't want them attached themselves too much to this dictator, this Nimrod, and this tower. So he changed the language and he spread them out.
Okay, got it.
That was the tikkun. That was the fix-up. Okay, what's this got to do with? Well, let's take this now to the next piece, which I want to plug into this. So the idea of knowledge and wisdom, okay? Because each great leader, each organization, each society always says, we have information, we have wisdom, and you're going to find it here. We have a monopoly on wisdom, on knowledge, on secrets. What is how do we, let's wrap on that for a second. Because the Freemasons, again, they are a society that has secrets. And we don't know what the secrets are. So you'll see many interviews online with Freemasons, and they'll say, no, we're an open society, read about us, but you're not getting the whole story. There's stuff inside there, right? There's been many famous people, powerful people who've been Freemasons. I mean, I personally know, I don't think I should mention, I know great rabbis who were Freemasons. They never saw it. And actually, in order to be a Freemason, you needed to have a belief in God. It was part.
I thought we weren't talking about this right now. About my past. I'm just joking around with you. Okay, fine, go on. Yeah. All right. So, what's it called? So you're saying that these people, these Freemason societies, these secret sects of societies, they were real, and not only were they real, but they were rabbis, prominent rabbis that were involved in there. And then my question is, well, why did they have to keep it secret? If all they were trying to accomplish was to do good for society, why not come out and be public about it?
Okay, so here's my thought on that. Here's my thought of that, and it's going to apply to we have to get to the Illuminati. The Illuminati was a secret society within the Freemasons that came out of it because they felt they weren't achieving what they were meant to be achieving, and they just went haywire. And that's when the governments, right, got very nervous, started to break it down. Again, there's people today.
It became illegal. It was illegal,
and that's why they say, so some say it disappeared, and some say it just went deep state, and it still exists today. I mean, there's so many videos online. I don't recommend you watch all of them, but of famous celebrities today that people say, I mean, even the dollar bill, right, with the pyramid and the eye on top, and they say those are Illuminati symbols that still are in power somewhere in the world, and definitely the United States today. Now, again, the early founders of the United States wrote about the Freemasons and the Illuminati and said they're gone, they're not a problem anymore. But that's a big question. I mean, that's the bit that's going to be open. Do they still exist? But I want to talk about this idea of deep knowledge, of information being held. You know, there's a very famous Gemara about 4 rabbis, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Elisha ben Avuha, also known as Acher, Ben Zoma, and Ben Azai. And the Gemara tells us that they went into an orchard. They went into a pardes. A pardes. Now, you read this Gemara, you think they went, apple picking, but that's obviously not what's going on. Why? Because Ben Zoma went crazy. Elisha ben Avuha became an apicoret, and he became a non-believer, also known as Acher, the other one. That was his nickname. Ben Azai died, and Rabbi Akiva, probably one of the greatest rabbis of Talmudic history, went into the orchard and left the orchard, right? Shalem, and he was okay. He was given the ability. So what is this orchard? So Pardes represents 4 letters: Pei, Resh, Dalet, Samech, Pshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. And the rabbis understand this, and the Zohar talks about this as well. It's interesting to see this interplay between a story from the Gemara and the Zohar. It's very interesting. That actually they went into the deepest Kabbalistic meditations. They went into Gan Eden. They saw things which no one ever seen, a deep meditative trance. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan, who we've mentioned already last class, has a whole essay just on this topic and says these 4 rabbis went into very deep. And it was so powerful that one of them went completely crazy, and one died because his neshama attached so much to Hashem that he died from the experience. And Elisha ben Avuha, for some reason, became an apicoret, just completely left Judaism, but kept his knowledge. And Rabbi Akiva was able to remain shalem. So this idea we see elsewhere in the Gemara, in Chagiga, that information, even within Judaism, sometimes is not meant for the masses. There's some knowledge which is not safe in public hands, in the plebeian hands. There is such an idea. So we speak of Judaism, of spreading Torah and spreading knowledge, Jews and non-Jews, making Kiddush Hashem, but in the end, there seems to be some knowledge, some wisdom that we don't trust. Now, some say this refers specific to practical Kabbalah, right? Taking Kabbalah and use it in a practical way. It's easy to misuse it. People can die from the experience, whether physically or emotionally, maybe. People become non-believers from it as well. I mean, I know people who grew up religious, got involved in Kabbalah, and that became their religion, and they left mainstream Judaism, became non-observant. Right? They used a copious amount of drugs to help them get to that point. as actually people who founded other Jewish movements and sects.
Right.
One of my friend's grandfather, he actually became a Baal Tshuva, him religious. His grandfather was someone who got involved very much. This became his thing, and he moved away from Judaism. It's very similar to the story of Elisha ben Avuha. So there's a danger that comes with this information. It just smacks so much of this discussion of the Illuminati, and
that's such a strange idea to say. I hear someone say today. I mean, I agree with it, but that there's a danger in information. There's a danger in wisdom. We live in the information age where everyone agrees that, you know, all information should be public. We should have access to everything at any time, at any moment. And you're saying that there's information that's dangerous.
Let me ask you like this, Robert. This is great discussion. I mean, I love this. I think about this stuff probably too much. So about aliens. Let's say aliens do exist, right? Would it be wise of the government to tell everyone? Or maybe there's a reason why they're trying to keep it silent, if aliens exist. I'm not saying where they are or not, but let's just say they do exist. What are the dangers that come? Sometimes maybe there's information that is harmful if you want to spread it, right? Because of the reaction of people to that information. So I'm not saying there's a good thing to shut down information and not reveal things, but sometimes you can understand people in power who have access to knowledge and wisdom not wanting to, or maybe it's the practical side of it, right? Just like everyone can know how to perform surgery, but I'm not going to put the knife in everyone's hand, because once it becomes practical, then we're dealing with a whole different reality, you know, and relationship, right?
So, but don't you feel like shortchanged almost, like when you go back as an adult and you relearn the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, and you ask the question, who was the serpent and why was the serpent there? And then later you find out that the serpent and Eve have an illicit relationship, right? It changes the whole entire story.
Hey, forget that. I mean, when I found out about the story of Purim, I thought the whole story of Purim, Achashverosh, he made a beauty contest, right? He violated hundreds, if not thousands of women till he found Esther, who he fell in love with and made his wife. There's a lot of stories that we have as a 5-year-old, right, which don't need to be told to a 5-year-old. They tell them a certain sanitized version. And then as they get older, you start to add more, you know, it's like, I don't learn probabilities as a 5-year-old. You don't learn calculus. Actually, probably shouldn't learn as an adult either. That's another discussion, not for now, right? You should learn statistics. But that's not the point. The point is sometimes wisdom, like you said, maybe it's a good analogy. Children aren't privy to all information because they don't know how to handle it. They won't accept it and they won't appreciate it. So maybe it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. No, maybe it is the same thing. So you're saying that these people felt that this information, basic freedom, that there's corruption and power in governments and monarchs, that you know, that idea should be suppressed.
They were trying to, if you believe what they say about the Illuminati, that still exists. Let's try to state it again. And there are many, many people out there. Many of them have like places to really give off this information online or social media, who believe the Illuminati is real. And they right now control the levers of power, and they are influencing us without us even realizing it. They have money, they have connections, they have power, and you can see signs you don't realize that are in society. I mean, the pyramid with the eye on top is, they say, an Illuminati symbol. Really, it's not, I don't believe, actually. The eye actually is meant to be the eye of God that watches over us, and the pyramid represents power, right? That and stability. I think that's really what it's meant to be. But I'm just giving you what they are saying. My point is that I hear, I mean, the Freemasons do still exist, and they do have some kind of power. I mean, I've spoken to someone who was involved a little bit with them, and he said the connections they have, and just on a small scale, small stuff in local activities. I can't talk about international. I don't know if it's an international organization. It exists internationally, but the idea that they have knowledge of information and they are doing certain things in order to influence, right? More than a lobby group, more than just a union, they're doing stuff behind the scenes in the shadows.
So my question is, why are they in the shadows? I think so. You're saying two things. One, you're saying one thing. You're saying number one is the reason why they're in the shadows because there's certain types of information that's dangerous to society. They're not ready. These are ideas that we're not ready to reveal to them.
Yeah.
I think there's another aspect of it here. We have to remember when these societies were formed. They were formed in the 14th century, 16th century, during the time where the churches had tremendous amount of power. And if you had a philosophy, an idea that was antithetical to church or monarch, you were putting your life in danger. You
Yeah.
could not speak openly like we do today. And therefore, they had to form these societies underground where they could share them with other people, because these ideas were heretical. And if the church found out about it, they'd burn you at the cross. And if the king found out about it, it'd be off with your head. They had no choice but to go underground.
I mean, there were people who we spoke about it, like Michelangelo. There's a
Yeah.
fantastic book we just
Sure.
spoke about, which I gave you, The Sistine Secrets. Michelangelo was really against the church, Rome,
Yeah.
the Pope.
Yeah.
And his whole, if you walk into the Sistine Chapel, which we've both done, I've led trips there, you see
Yeah.
there's no Christian vision whatsoever inside there.
All
Every
the
single
paintings, all the paintings are
Old Testament.
Yeah.
He wanted nothing to do with Christianity.
Yeah.
Right? He despised the popes. Actually, he put these disgusting images directly above where the Pope sat. He really gave it to them.
do you know that he actually drew a picture of the Pope on the ceiling?
I think I read that.
A serpent biting his crotch. It's actually there. You have to have a trained eye to find it, but there's actually, he hated it.
This form of anarchy, this was someone from Michelangelo, very important individuals employed by the popes, but this was going on all the time. There were people who wanted to break away. Again, the founding of the United States was such a so the knowledge, let's get back. So really we're saying that the knowledge these people had, these groups had, was really there to bring a change. They really thought that they were bringing a change to the world by doing this. They thought the change was going to happen, and we can't trust them because we're there to help the people, and we make the world a better place. We want to go back to Gan Eden, and they model themselves. And this is the fascinating thing. I have to look more into this, but there's a few papers online I just started to read on this connection between King Solomon and the Ark and his Freemasons and the Illuminati, which was, again, an organization within the Freemasons. They were like messing around instead of trying to take it to the next level.
Interesting.
And the last thing a government wants, that's why the government banned them. The government doesn't like these things, which kind of like bolsters their own claim. You see, the government's against us. We have knowledge that can bring them down.
This idea of secrecy, I just want to go back to it. So there's another idea, like when we talk about Jewish tradition, right? Why do we have some traditions like in Kabbalah that are secret? People don't talk about them. This is what the Mekubalim did. Rav Ovadia Yosef, when he writes his Sefer Halichot Olam in his introduction, which is the book itself is a book that is posek, where he takes the halacha and he goes against the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai was like the preeminent rabbi of the last 100 years. And Rav Ovadia is a young, intelligent rabbi who's changing the Jewish, the law of the Sephardic community, and he's making it more lenient.
Yeah.
And people ask him, how could you do this? How do you go against the Ben Ish Chai? So he says in his introduction that the Ben Ish Chai brought in Kabbalistic ideas into the mainstream. Those ideas are chumrot, those ideas are stringencies, and his approach was to bring back all the leniencies, right?
To kind of like make Judaism more for the masses. But if you go back, you have to predate. The Ben Ish Chai didn't create Kabbalah. He was one of the great Kabbalists and halachic writers, right? But this secret information, which he started to give, especially in Ben Yehoyada, his commentary on the Gemara, right, where he gives Kabbalistic interpretations of Jewish history and Jewish stories. His writings, which I came obsessed with, when it comes to Esther, right? He has a whole thing. And Esther was really she had a demon side to her as well. There's a whole story he goes into in terms of Esther, who was a brilliant power broker and halachic genius. But this idea that's what Ovadia Yosef did. But even you look at like modern books like Faith and Folly by Chacham, Yaakov Hillel, he speaks against people who delves into these things, right? So even great Kabbalists like him, and he's a world-renowned Mekubal Kabbalist, right? He doesn't like it when people delve into things that they shouldn't be delving into. He says it's dangerous, and there seem to be two schools of thought. Why? One school of thought comes from the Rambam, the Maimonides, and one comes from the Ramban, Nachmanides. I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but if I did, I apologize. I'll say it again. The Rambam says, stay away from these things because they're nonsense and they're going to fill you full of garbage and lead you astray. Okay. The Ramban says, no, they're real. These things are real. This information that is hidden in Kabbalah and practical Kabbalah, it's real. But he says, be very careful with it because it can also lead you astray, but through a different way. So both kind of agree, but through different avenues to get to that point. So Rav Yosef wouldn't say Kabbalah is nonsense. He's just saying it's not for the masses.
Why wasn't Kabbalah for the masses?
That's the question. So there's different opinions. One opinion is it's going to lead people, which again, I've seen, it's going to lead people away from real, authentic Judaism, and it becomes a religion, which we've seen in our own day. We've seen groups that have made Kabbalah into its own realm. It's so attractive and it speaks to us. And with this mystical idea of Judaism really speaks to people that they become obsessed with it. I mean, even the Rambam says, and he wrote the laws of Mashiach, but he says, don't try to figure out too much on Mashiach because you'll get obsessed with it and it's going to take over the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. So as you said at the beginning, there's this inclination we have for this secret information, this life-changing, this force that was put into creation. But as the Gemara says, it's got to be taught to one, maybe two people. That's it. It's got to be kept small because it's going to take us away from our real mission here on earth.
Is it also possible that that same idea with the adult and the child approach, meaning that the ideas that Kabbalah present are so deep and esoteric that there's no real language to describe it, and therefore we often use metaphor, analogy to kind of impart these ideas.
Oh, 1,000%.
There's no language for them, so it's so easy to misconstrue and misunderstand that, like these, like Acher and Ben Zoma, who end up, being blown, they're short-circuited, so to speak, by the information.
That's right. I mean, by the way, look at the story of creation, right? You look at that, and if someone doesn't study this as an adult, they think it's a story of a man and woman in a garden with a snake. But Maaseh Bereshit is one of the deepest prophecies, right? Stories. It's like Maaseh Merkava. It's the depth in there is unbelievable. That's how the rabbis describe it. So we're getting this little glimpse. They use analogies, metaphors, It's like me saying to you, I know a guy who killed 1,000 people with his pen. So a child what do they think? They see a person stabbing someone with his pen. But if I explain to you, you know what he did? He signed a decree that 1,000 people should get killed. It's a whole different story. Suddenly it becomes a whole power story. Who is this person? Right? How does the power of the pen, what is writing, what's a decree, what are societies, what are dictators? It changes the whole story. So as a child, you see a person stabbing someone with a pen. But if that's all you see as an adult, you're obviously missing everything. I think there's something here. Someone asked a very good question, if you don't mind, just in the chat here in Zoom. If Illuminati exists in the shadows of controlling and making the world markets and powers move, if we reveal them, make it accessible for all, do you think the world will be a better place? I'm going to answer that my way. And my way is going to be, that's exactly what Mashiach's going to do. He's going to reveal things. When we talk about Mashiach revealing and destroying all other religions, they're going to disappear. This is going to be part of it. It is a good thing. But question is, what's going to replace it? So Mashiach's going to he's going to give us a good replacement, right? Right now, people have a need for this thing. So right now, who's this famous hacker who just, my goodness, I just sent you all his stuff.
Is that Mia stuff?
He's in prison now.
Michael Snowden?
England, the other one.
Not Snowden, the other guy. Assange.
I said Julian Assange, right? What's this guy doing? People despise him. Governments. He's revealing secrets. Snowden did the same thing, obviously, right? But people seem to prefer him as they do to Julian Assange. But what are these people trying to do? They're trying to blow the lid on everything, and the world can't handle it. And they're trying to suppress it.
But the world has handled it, and I think that Alana's point is that the information makes it better. And I think that, I would answer a little bit differently. I would say, Alana, that you know, everything will be revealed in time. I do believe that the current philosophy, the postmodernist philosophy, which is so destructive because it's misunderstood, the idea of postmodernism is really that, you know, we live in a society where there are no defined realities because there's an ultimate reality that we can't fully comprehend. There's God's reality, and we just see snippets of it. We say, Shivim Panim La Torah. There are 70 different facets to understanding Torah. So it's very easy for me, the Sephardic rabbi, to say the Sephardic way is the right way, which it is. But you know, there is something unique about the Hasidic approach or the Ashkenazi approach, and they're all telling truths. But it's very hard from our vantage point to kind of see the whole picture. So postmodernism is the philosophy of Mashiach. It's a philosophy that says that all of these things are telling truths, even when it comes to, you know, gender, masculine and feminine. Each of those things are expressing a truth. None of them are better.
Okay, I hear where you're going with it. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, Rabbi.
Good.
Maybe I haven't fully understood you, but that's okay, because this is a backwards and forwards. I think what they're trying to achieve, the idea of equality and unity, that's definitely their goal and their vision. I think the way they're going around it is totally wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
Destroying everything else.
I agree.
There's no doubt about it. There's a pre-messianic element to this. And what's Mashiach's job? To shine the light, the Illuminati, to illuminate, to bring truth to the world. That's his job, okay? This individual, there's the pre-messianic age, which we're in right now. Everyone agrees to that, right? Even the Christians and Muslims, everyone realizes there's a change happening in the world that it just can't carry on the way it is, right? The information age is just too strong, and everything's going to be, what you're seeing now with this Julian Assange and Snowden is just a little lid. It's going to all blow up eventually, and everything's going to be revealed. Okay, and the world's going to have to face, the light's going to have to shine on these dark areas, and a lot of truth is going to come to us. But before Mashiach comes, we're still in that phase. There's a lot of sheker in the world. There's a
Before
lot of
you go on, I just want to make a plug right now. If you go to Amazon.com and you Google "The Future: A Guide to Jewish Messiah, Israel, and the End of Days," you can pick up a copy of Rabbi Lawrence Hadjoff's book, "The Future," for $19.99.
What an excellent plug! Shameless.
Shameless, excellent plug. Shameless. That's how you do it. But he has all these ideas, the sources, the topics in there where he goes through those details.
Listen, there's no doubt about it. Something's going on. We realize that. I believe that this is the build-up, people's fascination with revealing. That's the Illuminati fascination and the Freemason fascination and the secret society and the people running, right? The whole alien obsession we've all picked up on in the past 10, 15 years, even last week, and every day we're seeing stories. People want the truth. As we say in the X-Files, the truth is out there. It is out there, and it's all going to be revealed. It is all going to be revealed. That's really Mashiach's job, and the pre-Messianic era is leading us to there, right? That is the fascination. That's why people are obsessed with, what do you care about Illuminati? Why did that come into vogue again, to fashion, whether they exist or not, right? I do believe there's people behind pulling strings. I do believe that. Are the Illuminati or not? I can't say, right? But something is going on.
Salam alaikum. Welcome from Indonesia.
Wow, we have a view in Indonesia. That's probably my first.
Yeah, it's our first also. Welcome. I think that the idea is like this: is that when we have you have a society, secret society like Judaism, and there is a secret society within Judaism, meaning because Judaism itself has its own desire to build a greater society who wants to go ahead and create a reality that inspires the world to become bigger, better, and more. And then they go through their own version of Order 66. For those of you that are Star Wars fans, when all the Jedis are executed, and you have a situation where Jews themselves, rabbis, were gone into hiding, where the ideas of the Torah itself was hidden from the world.
I must mention, since you mentioned that, I got to mention Harry Potter, because I'm British, obviously.
Sure.
And this idea of that, there's Muggles, right? And then you have the witches and Harry Potter, and he enters a secret society of information, of knowledge. People are really attached to it. People love these ideas, right? That there's we're living on two planes, right? The Muggles have no idea what's going on, right? And you have all of the wizardry, right? And the wizards are here, they have their secret schools and their secret information, and we have it. obviously a made up story, but this idea, there's two levels of understanding of this knowledge, as we said, from the days of Nimrod, right? We have the people who run the power and they have the tower, and the plebeians who are all around it. And in Judaism, we have the Torah Shabbal Peh, the oral Torah and the written Torah, and we have the Kabbalah, the mystical Judaism, right? Which kind of like floats below, is part of the orchard. It's there, but it's below. All of this is coming together, but all of this will be revealed very, very soon. Definitely with coming Mashiach, which we're on the cusp of right now, no doubt.
So what is that? Is the Messianic era just the revelation, and therefore all these things that have been leading up to this particular time in history, the whole gamut of history kind of just revealing itself? Yeah. And then we finally figure out why all these things happen and so on and so forth.
That's exactly how the rabbis understand. Everyone agrees with that. The way we get there, what the world's going to be like once Mashiach comes, there's dispute. But everyone agrees that truth, that Emet will fill, the prophets say, will fill the world, just like the Mayim, the waters, cover the entire earth. So wisdom will be plentiful, right? And Mitzion Tzeitzei Torah, Jerusalem, will become, already is becoming, the hub of wisdom. Ki Mitzion Tzeitzei Torah Mishalayim. From Jerusalem, all wisdom will shine out, right, with the rebuilding of the temple. That's all part of that. And there's a lot more. And the end of war, no more wars, no anti-Semitism, no more false religions. Not everyone becomes Jewish. Right? There is going to be a lot of converts to Judaism before Mashiach comes, but when this information gets out, there's going to the prophet Isaiah tells us everyone's going to stream to Jerusalem to learn wisdom. So that will become the epicenter, which we've been seeing over the past, half a century.
So how do we tie this all together? So we have this thing called an Illuminati. We're saying that it's real. There are secret societies. We're saying that they do have influence. That they're trying to move society to a particular direction. We're saying that there may be some Jewish undertones to some of these ideas, but ultimately they won't be fully revealed until this Messianic.
I'm not saying there's Illuminati or not. I'm not an expert. I don't know, and no one really knows, because that's the whole idea. But the idea that there's wisdom, there's knowledge, people who are trying to change the world, and this has gathered such a pace in our society today, that's become fascinating. That's become fascinating, that people have really, it's speaking to people. This secret knowledge, this wisdom, this wizardry, this Illuminati, this Star Wars Jedi, whatever you want to say, this is all the same thing of people realizing this information, this knowledge, and we want it. And now the world is saying, hey, we don't want to have this secret stuff anymore. We want to see what's happening in Area 51. We want to know, right? And it speaks to people. And I'm telling you, I believe that this desire, forget the organization, this desire of people to know, to finally have the truth, is biblical and messianic in nature. That I can say for sure. Whether this particular group, secret society, still exists, who knows? It wouldn't surprise me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. So let's do this. Let's take some questions from the people in the audience.
We've spoken a long time. Wow. By the way, this is what we like, by the way. Even we're not online, me and Rabbi Ruvik could just talk for hours on this stuff.
Sorry.
You're just tuning into a conversation between us. If you have questions, you can definitely write them inside here.
Did the Masons help rebuild the temple?
No, I don't think they existed back then.
They wish they did, but no. The temple was built by people way before the Freemasons.
No doubt about it. Did they fashion themselves? Possibly. They definitely say that the Masonic temples are designed based upon the temple of King Solomon. That they'll openly say that. Yeah.
I'm not sure if most of you are aware of this or not, but I just mentioned this to you earlier also, that the Sistine Chapel itself is a built replica of the first temple of King Solomon. That there's what we see today as different layers built around it, but the inner chamber of the Sistine Chapel is a replica of the Temple of Solomon.
By the way, Michelangelo, for sure, we know, and in the Sistine Secrets he mentions this, right, Blythe, but we know that he knew Torah and he knew Kabbalah. He claims that he had actually a deep knowledge of Kabbalah, Michelangelo. And what's fascinating is he depicts in the Sistine Chapel the forbidden fruit being figs. Nowhere in the Torah does it say that, but in the Gemara it does. Okay, so it's fascinating, right? And the Christian usually say it's an apple was the forbidden fruit. So he knew stuff that we don't realize.
Interesting. What is an example of things that? What's another example of a group of people throughout history who were given certain knowledge that was not accessible to other people?
Besides Kabbalah, I mean, Kabbalah is probably the best example.
Like even think of it in terms of even like the high priests in the temple.
Right.
You know, the Kohanim had a very specific set of instructions of what they were meant to do, how to do it, and it was uniquely different than anything anyone else did.
Right.
You know, there was a process of how they would do their shechita, how they would go in and slaughter their animals, the prayers. The Levi'im had a special mesorah of how they would create music.
Even the incense in the temple was the knowledge of what spices to put inside the incense. The Ketoret was run by a family called the Avtinas family, and they were the only family who knew exactly what amount of incense to put inside in order to get the beautiful smell when they burn the incense at the Beit HaMikdash. So there was a lot of secret wisdom and information inside the Beit HaMikdash. That's fascinating. Yeah, it sounds so Freemasonry, although it came much later, obviously, right? This idea that this beautiful building housed inside a great knowledge and wisdom that we're going to try to keep in here and just give you a little smell of once in a while.
Are there any other questions? All right, so let's close this up. So really, what Rabbi Hajji is saying, Rabbi Hajjaf is saying, is that these secret societies were there to push a narrative, and the narrative was a narrative that society as a whole may not have been ready to receive, or is not ready to receive. But at some point, there is this desire to express it at the right time when all things align themselves to express it in the most profound way. Does someone have a question before we close up? Anyone have a question?
Okay, thank you for joining us.
1 second. I think we have someone up there that has.
Can I just a comment? I started to read a book about the friendship and partnership of Benjamin Franklin and George Washington. Quite independently of one another, they were Freemasons.
Yeah.
So now, as I continue reading this book about the relationship, I've read many books about Benjamin Franklin as well as George Washington, but not their friendship and partnership. I will now be reading the book in the context of whether or not their Freemasonry, so to speak, had something influential in connection with the commencement of our country and democracy.
I think it was. Again, it's my opinion. I read something very similar to that, and they spoke about it openly. But there's something going on. This breakaway, I think they fashioned their methodology of breaking away from the church, breaking away from England, creating a new world order, which they did very successfully. But there is stuff written about them being Freemasons. Yeah. I know chief rabbis who are Freemasons.
You know, there is actually a great book called The Hebrew Republic. I forget the name of the author, but in it, he's a professor from Harvard. He's Israeli. He makes the argument that so much of the Enlightenment movement, and which would be a lot of the ideas behind these groups, Illuminati and Freemasons, were based on Torah ideas. And I mean, it's a book is about 300 pages. 150 of those pages are just sources, because he just wants to make the point that so much of what the Enlightenment was based on was this idea that Torah ideas were finally filtering through to the masses, and that these things that were hidden were finally coming forward because of the printing press. If you were a printer like Benjamin Franklin was, and you were trying to make money selling text, where would you find a treasure trove of books and texts? Yeah, Jews were writing for a really long time. He was paying for people to convert those things from the Aramaic Hebrew into English Latin, which was something that they all read. And those ideas finally began to filter through in the creation of the government. So I wouldn't be surprised if even if they may not have been part of those secret sects and societies, I think that the literature that they were consuming at the time, like today, you know, people today are watching Netflix and watching movies. Back then, they're actually having fun learning Midrash, Gemara, and Jewish and ethical moral sources to help kind of refine the society, their mind that they want to live in. And so much of what we have today here in this beautiful country is a country that is a somewhat of an expression of Jewish principles.
Okay, Rabbi Ruve, next week we'll be speaking about, do you recall?
No, I don't. I
think it's the Rothschilds next week.
I think it's Rothschilds also. Yes, the Rothschilds.
Okay.
Rothschild,
So
banking family, banking and money and Judaism.
Wow.
We had a
There's not much to say on that. Is there really enough to talk about banking and Jews and money? Wow.
Yeah, we got a lot to say on that also.
Wow.
Talk about Madoff and other things and so on and so forth. There's a question over here I'm trying to understand from our friend from Indonesia, who says that that there are Zionists, Judaism have a relationship with Illuminati and Freemasons, and that's why people convert to Judaism. They don't hold a Zionist mindset, but instead something in FIDA, which I don't know what that is. Judaism equals
Intifada, the Intifada's one of the.
Oh, Judaism related with.
Okay, so it's a little bit off topic, but I will say that any person who converts to Judaism, they have to keep the 613 mitzvot, the laws, or accept them. If they're male, get a Brit Milah, and they have to also immerse in a mikvah, in a ritual bath. I know there was a rabbi in Indonesia. He actually moved back to Israel. He was the chief rabbi of Indonesia, Rabbi Tovia Singer. Is that right?
Yeah.
So maybe you should look him up. He's someone who has a lot of contacts out there. His name is Tovia Singer. I'll write it over here in the chat, and you can find, he's very available on the internet, and you can be in touch with him because he has a lot of information about what's happening in Indonesia, and he knows his information very, very well.
Right,
next week's class is on
Jessica,
Elon Musk virtual reality.
Yeah, first of all, that's going to be a lot of fun, that class. Next week's
Wow.
class will be Elon Musk's virtual reality. And that's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk about how do we define reality? What is reality? Are we living in a virtual reality? What are the arguments for how we define what reality is versus virtual reality? And we'll hopefully try to also tie in the Jewish views of Elon Musk's argument that we're not living in a real reality, but everything around us.
He says it's highly unlikely.
Yeah.
Unlikely that we are, or very highly likely that we are in a virtual reality. That's his statement recently, which blew up the internet. We're going to look into that. There's a lot to say on that with Judaism. Oh, a ton.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And God willing, we'll see you all next week. Laila Tov, Shavua Tov. Have an amazing week, everybody. Let's end it with our song, no?